Use code SPIKEFEEDERS for 5% off at face-to-facegames.com. You can shop face-to-face games in US dollars, Canadian dollars, or even euros, and they'll ship just about everywhere. That's code SPIKEFEEDERS at checkout at face-to-facegames.com to help support the show.
And we are back with Game 4 of our Major League Commander coverage. Today, our hero Jim is playing Boros, Koll, Clampstorm. This deck is bizarre. We've got a video explaining the game-winning combo here, but the gist of it is, get a 0-drop creature into play, equip it with something, and make it die to get Koll to return it to your hand. This means you can draw your deck with Skullclamp, and from there the world's your oyster. Next up, Fukins is playing Derevi. This is a classical stacks deck. It uses stacks creatures to apply pressure, draw cards with things like Aura and Frostfang, and uses Derevi untap triggers on things like Bloomtender and Feyburrow Elder. Pontus is playing Tevesh Ishai. This is a He-Man deck, otherwise known as Humility Effective Mid-Range Ad Nauseam. This is a deck that can go one of two ways. You can either stack counters on Ishai, then slam a Humility, and kill people with a 1/1 with a bunch of counters on it, or you can kill time dealing with threats, and set up for a mid-game Ad Nauseam. Next up, Deco is playing Ikra Jeska. This is a mid-range Ad Nauseam deck as well, but it doesn't play Humility. Instead, we're using Ikra, making Deco's Ad Nauseam way bigger. Let's get right into it. Sorry about this, for a small portion of the first turn, I was only recording my screen, so this is what we've got. Use your imagination. Jim starts the game by drawing a card, playing an Arid Mesa, then cracking it going to 39 to get a plateau. He casts Mox Diamond, pitching Scalding Tarn, then casts Talisman of Conviction, and passes. Fukins draws a card, plays Misty Rainforest, then cracks it going to 39, getting a Savannah. He uses that to cast Arbor Elf, and passes the turn. Pontus draws a card, plays an Urza Saga, and casts a Soul Ring. With that, he passes to Deco. Deco draws a card and casts a Mana Crypt. He moves to his end step, and Jim's got action. He takes 1 off of his Talisman to cast Enlightened Tutor, grabbing Skullclamp. Then Deco proceeds to pass the turn. Jim draws a card, takes 1 off Talisman to cast Koll. It resolves, and he follows it up with the Skullclamp that he just tutored up. It resolves and he passes the turn. Fukins untaps, draws a card, and plays a Dryad Arbor as his land for turn. He casts a Sylvan Safekeeper. He moves to combat, attacks Deco for 1, Deco declares no blocks, and Fukins passes the turn. Pontus starts his turn by drawing a card, and taking up Urza's Saga for 2. He plays Exotic Orchard as his land for turn. He then follows it up with a Chrome Mox, exiling Dothi Voidwalker. Casts Tevesh, and immediately +2s it to make 2 Thralls, then passes the turn. Deco untaps. In his upkeep, he rolls for Mana Crypt and wins the flip. He draws a card, he casts Tinderwall, and passes the turn. Jim starts off turn 3 by untapping, then drawing a card. He casts Lion's Eye Diamond. He follows it up with Auriok Steelshaper, which resolves. He casts a Crimson Kobold, which also resolves. He equips the Skullclamp to Crimson Kobolds. The Kobolds die, trigger Koll and Skullclamp, and Jim holds priority, cracking his LED for 3 red, discarding Unexpectedly Absent. With his hand empty, the Koll trigger then resolves, returning Crimson Kobolds to his hand. He draws 2 off the Skullclamp trigger. He recasts Crimson Kobolds and demonstrates a loop. Each iteration of the loop, he draws 2 cards, and the end state is Crimson Kobolds in his hand. He repeats the loop 30 times to draw 60 cards. Using 1 of the floating red, he casts Mere Moon Vessel. Unlike the Crimson Kobolds, Moon Vessel actually costs a mana. This is a bit of a dead end, and it takes a minute for him to regroup. He casts Jeska's Will, targeting Deco, making 6 red mana and exiling Ancient Tomb, Gamble, and Sunbaked Canyon. He casts Mana Crypt. He casts Mox Opal, then repeats the Crimson Kobold loop 5 more times to draw 10 more cards. He casts Steelshaper's Gift and searches up Mortarpod. He casts Mortarpod. He casts Fervent Champion. He equips the Mortarpod to Fervent Champion, then sacrifices it to its own ability, targeting Fukins. That triggers Koll and returns Fervent Champion to his hand. He recasts the Fervent Champion and realizes this is also a dead end. He finally figures it out and casts Dockside Extortionist, making 4 treasures. He equips Mortarpod to Dockside, then sacks it to its own ability to deal 1 to Fukins. Koll returns it to hand, and he recasts it, making more treasures. This nets 1 mana each time and allows Jim to continue sacrificing the Dockside to deal damage. And that's game. I'm not gonna lie, this was not the best showcase of my skill. I went down 2 dead ends before actually figuring out how to win the game, but I was saved by just having it. This was a really good opening hand, and it's enough to take my record to a respectable 1-3. So just a short episode for you this week. We'll catch you next time.
Huge thanks to all of our patrons. We love trying new things like this, and your support really makes it possible.
Hey, thank you for checking out the Spike Feeders on YouTube. If you're not subscribed yet, make sure you hit that subscribe button before you close the window, or you can click on this link to check out our other great videos.